Welcome to my fourth class of my Learn Tarot series, my free online beginners course. I'm so happy you're here. This is a course that's teaching you tarot without having to memorize card meanings, without having to read a bunch of esoteric occult books. Within just a couple techniques, you'll be reading for yourself, reading for others, no problem. So let's get into it. My name's Joe Monteleone. I'm a modern mystic, a total misfit, and your tarot tour guide. I run the Tarot Mysticism Academy, an online international school where I teach a number of things from advanced tarot training, mysticism, healing, personal development, professional practice, and essentially how we can find the Philosopher's Stone, you know? So get cozy, get your cards out, and get your journal out, because today we will be resuming the Suit of Swords. Remember, I've made this free journal for you that you can download and take all of the appropriate notes as we go through the material. You can download that through the link in the description or at tarotmysticismacademy.com. This is what we'll be working from. So in the first class, you learn the elements: fire, water, air, and earth, elements of astral birth, remix, all of that. And today we're going to be looking at the Suit of Swords. So remember that fire is represented by the Suit of Wands. It's the subject. The water is represented by the Suit of Cups. It's the object. Air is represented by the Suit of Swords, and it is the identity that percolates between the two. It's kind of the groove, the dance between the back and forth of me and you, subject and object, here and there. And that very dance is the craziness of the mind. It's the whirlwind of thoughts. It's air itself, the space between the sacred masculine of fire, the sacred feminine of water. Now, what does this actually mean in normal terms? This means it's literally the mind, your thoughts, your mental well-beings, but more specifically your ego, your identification, and society itself. So today's class will show you how the Suit of Swords illustrates this back and forthness between fire and water, masculine and feminine, subject and object, Purusha and Prakriti, Brahman and Maya, the list goes on forever. It shows you how the ego is born between the two, and how when the Suit of Swords shows up in a reading, we are faced with our own selves, our own thoughts, and also our own identifications, which further manifest and complicate itself into societal structures, cultures, agreements, disagreements, battles, loss. This is going to be a deep one. I firmly believe that the Suit of Swords is one of the most important suits because it is where we are faced with our own mortality. It is like the very center of the beginning of the mystical path. So before we start with the Ace of Swords, let's review the technique that I taught you all in class 1. This type of card, which comes from some weird, obscure, esoteric book that doesn't actually mean anything, this is how you can actually read the cards. Simply, accurately, and amazingly. Let's do it. So, 3 steps for the numbered minor arcana. Step 1, notice the suit symbol and recall the meanings of the associated elements. So in today's class, it's going to be air, air being about the mind, ego, society, technology, societal structures, thoughts, relationship with self, conflict as well, conflict and resolution. Number 2, notice the scene. How do the people, places, or things in the card interact with the suit symbol? So you're going to notice who are the people, places, and things in the artwork. How do they interact with the literal suit symbol, the actual swords on the cards? Step 3 is the most fun part. Step 3 is this symbolizes how they interact with the element and leads to the meaning of the cards. So based on how they interact with the suit symbol is going to show you how they interact with everything that the element of air represents. The swords throughout the sword suit are going to symbolize mind, ego, society, technology, systems, politics, conflicts, all that stuff in relationship to the scenes. So like with all the suits, we start with the Ace of Swords, and we see that the hand of God, consciousness, being, nothing but the truth, so help me God, reality, whatever you want to call it, the ultimate, the absolute, that hand comes out of the cloud and holds a sword. So we are met with a gift of a sword. What does a sword represent? Mind, ego. We're given the gift of our mind, of our rationality, of our intellect, of our knowledge, of our capacity to conceptualize and build a matrix of meaning outside of the one unit of awareness that is the ultimate reality. That's what the Suit of Swords is all about. And we can see that this sword is piercing a crown. So a crown might symbolize authority. It can also symbolize knowledge. It can also symbolize supra-rational knowledge. This gets a little bit into the Kabbalah, but it's essentially showing how the sword of truth pierces every possible authority, but also goes so far as to extend beyond the mind's rationale, beyond the authority of the rational mind to fix reality into divisive meaning abstractions. One of the things we're going to find very quickly with the Suit of Swords is that it represents the divisive aspect of the mind. In the same way that the mind discerns experience into meaning and name and idea, the sword cuts things in two. So the Ace of Swords in the tarot reading can represent new knowledge, a great idea, the very gift of awareness, and specifically an invoked and harnessed focus towards something. Two of Swords. So notice the suit symbol, it's a sword, so we know we're talking about ego, mind, air stuff. Notice the interaction with the scene. We have somebody who's holding the swords across their heart, and they are blindfolded in front of a sea with the moon above. Notice how balanced the swords are. This is somebody who's holding their mind in balance. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's about, boundaries, it's about putting distance between you and somebody else, and that's all true, but when you look at this more deeply, the distance that this person is putting between them and the external world isn't so much of a defense as it is a focus, as it is a meditation. They have a blindfold so that they are turning away from the outer world, holding the two aspects of their mind, the two hemispheres of their brain, in perfect balance in meditation. This is actually a card of peace. This is a card of meditation and focus. So just like with every other card, take your tarot journal and write out the element, write the relationship to the scene, and write the meanings below. This stuff is going to grow over time. So in a reading, the Two of Swords is about peace, and that may manifest as distance. The classic Three of Swords. Ooh, we love this one. This is a really deep one, so I might take a little bit more time on this. Let's use our technique. First of all, we're looking at swords, so we know this is going to be about mind, thought, ego, but more specifically, it's going to be about division because swords divide, the mind divides. Now let's notice the interaction. We have three swords piercing a heart in front of some stormy weather. So what could this mean? Three swords being the mind, being the divisive quality of mind and the ego, piercing the heart, piercing emotions. So from this technique, we can surmise that this is about the difficulty, the heartbreak, the emotional ordeal that comes about when the mind interferes. Whoa, okay, wait a minute. I thought this card was about heartbreak. Yes, but what is heartbreak? It is the experience of separation between you and something that you thought completed you, or you needed, or was essential. Ultimately, the Three of Swords is the illusion of incompleteness. The illusion of incompleteness is the ego itself, is the mind itself. And when that ego, when that mind pierces the heart of something that is happening naturally, we get a lot of pain. So much of emotional pain is resisting. Some of it's natural, like grief, etc. They're natural things that we go through that is helpful in our body and our nervous system. It is normal, but so much of pain and suffering is our interpretation of pain. In Buddhism, this would be the second arrow that the Buddha talks about. The first arrow is pain, the second arrow is our interpretation of pain, which is suffering. So this is the mind which is meddling with the emotions, piercing the heart to try to make something right. When nothing has to be made right, everything is already complete. The Four of Swords. This is an interesting one and is also slightly ambiguous, like the Four of Cups. What do we see? We see swords, so we know we're going to deal with mind, ego, we know we're going to deal with societies and structures. And let's notice the interaction with the scene. Well, we have what looks to be like some sort of coffin. A lot of people see this card, they think it's the death card, but we know it's not. We see this coffin, which is actually a night vigil happening. There is this ritual happening where a knight is sleeping but is really awake and meditating before going out and hopefully not killing too many people. But in this card, we are met with a sense of peace. There's no war going on, there's no heartbreak, and there's not even any people in the card. What we do is we see some stained glass with potentially Jesus healing the sick. Remember, this deck was directed by a Christian mystic. But yeah, so we see kind of this ritual, and then we see the 3 swords are hung up on the wall but not being used. So this is called the Lord of Rest from Strife. Being that the swords aren't being used, that they are just hanging on the wall, and there is this peaceful night vigil happening, we can surmise that there is peace in the land. This is a card about taking a break, about relaxation. It's a card about being disarmed, at least for a moment, but specifically being disarmed in acquiescing to a culture or to a societal structure that is keeping the peace. I mean, it can also just be taking a nap. The 5 of Swords is such a nasty card and such an important card because it covers so much ground in terms of the human experience and especially our darker aspects. So remember that the suit of Swords is the ego, which is an agent of separation and division. It is the ego that says, this is me and this is you and we're different. That illusion of difference and separation finds its most severe, one of its most severe manifestations in the 5 of Swords, and of course later in the suit. So let's use our technique. Notice the suit symbol, so we know we're dealing with ego, conflict, society, mind. Notice its interaction. We have somebody who's holding the swords. It looks like this person on the left is picking up the swords, where we have 2 people walking away. They kind of look upset, especially the one farther in the distance. So people have concluded that there was a battle that the person in the foreground won, and the prize of the battle is the swords that he is now taking. But let's go deeper by using the technique. If the swords represent thoughts, identifications, values, even societal groups, structures, and culture, this is somebody who is stealing, taking, or winning the thoughts, values of somebody else. So maybe these swords can represent the ideals that were wielded in a battle. I mean, you know, today, hopefully, we're not going to be battling each other with swords, but we do battle each other with language. I mean, I'm on YouTube, I get crazy comments every day from every other possible religion in the world about how I'm going to hell and all this stuff, and it's really beautiful. It's fun. The fervor and the wielding of the keyboard to attack, and it's craziness how impassioned people are about all this stuff. But that's the 5 of Swords. It's somebody trying to win and take the values and belief systems of somebody else. It's a card of gaslighting and manipulation and attack and battles won but not necessarily justified. And on the reverse side, it's a card of losing what you believed in, losing your belief in yourself, losing, in a way, your ego. Apply ego to these swords in the card, and you'll really understand what's going on. So remember, write down the element, the relationship to the symbol, and then under that, write down all the meanings of the cards. So after we lose the battle of the 5 of Swords, we kind of have to get out of there and lick our wounds, right? That happens in the 6 of Swords, the card of the refugee. So in the 6 of Swords, let's use our technique. What do we see? We see swords, so we know we're going to be looking at society, mind, ego, values, culture, identifications, all that good stuff. And we are seeing those swords in a boat. We're seeing 2 people below, 1 person above. The person above is bringing the boat into the water, into the new land. So what do we see? We see somebody helping people in need move across a situation into a new life, a new location, but carrying with them their swords, carrying with them their ideas, their culture, their identification, their values, their ideals. And these swords are not being used for battle, they are just being transported. So this is overcoming something, finding clearer waters to bring your ideas and your beliefs in a peaceful way. Esoterically, it's called the card of earned success. And the earned success is leaving behind a situation that doesn't work for you anymore for a situation that does. I love those esoteric titles because they kind of syncretize lots of esoteric data points into one title. And if you really want to deepen your tarot practice, you're going to want to study its esoteric connections. You know, you're going to want to learn its connections to Kabbalah and Hermeticism and astrology and numerology and Neoplatonism and non-duality, personal development, energy work, the list goes on. Luckily for you, I teach it all. If you really want to jump in and you want to take your tarot practice seriously and actually learn its deeper meanings, you're going to want to look into my master curriculum. I have over 10 programs that cover all of this stuff. And the coolest thing about this is it gets tarot on a scale that transcends the personal. Most people go to tarot at first and they want to kind of know what's going to happen. And then they start using tarot more for some deeper work, like who am I, exploring their own selves. But there's another layer. There is a mystical layer to tarot where tarot actually illustrates the path to higher states of consciousness. And oh, when it all connects, there's no going back. It is so cool. So if you want to understand the mystical aspect of tarot, go to tarotmysticismacademy.com, check out the programs, and check in with your intuition. And if it's right, we can meet and chat about it and potentially work together. But for now, let's continue on with the Seven of Swords. So what's our technique? Notice the suit symbol, swords. That's air, that's mind, that's ego, that's values, identifications, all of that. And notice the environment, notice the scene. This is somebody who's carrying swords in probably the most dangerous possible way. And it looks like he is sneaking away from an encampment with two swords in the ground. So what can we surmise from this? Well, he's holding ideas, identifications, culture, his ego, his sense of self, but holding it in a dangerous way. This card is called the Lord of Unstable Effort. He's holding it in a way that's going to hurt him. I mean, you can see the blades on his hands. So he's holding his own ego, his own identification, his own thoughts, and those thoughts are directed against him. This is somebody who has maybe some good ideas, but the way they're holding or actualizing or applying their ideas is going against them. Maybe they have self-doubt, they don't fully believe in themselves, or their ideas are leading into a risky path. What's more, this person looks like they're sneaking away from an encampment. So a lot of people interpret this as the card of thievery and sneakiness and all that good stuff, mischief. When this card shows up in a reading, it's time to check out on the path ahead. If it's a path that is going for you or against you, and if there's a different direction that will serve you better. Also, make sure you lock your doors at night. So the next three cards are really when the Suit of Swords kind of shifts into its darker conclusion, but it's so important. Again, it's one of the most important suits because we're going to be faced with our own mortality, and I'm so excited. So let's jump into the Eight of Swords. Notice the suit symbol, it's sword, it's connected with air, that has to do with mind, ego, society, conflict. Notice the scene, we have a woman that's tied up, she is blindfolded, and surrounding her are swords. This card, like many of the cards of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, can be a potential nod or wink to some Masonic rituals, perhaps. But let's use our technique to derive divinatory meaning here. We see the woman is trapped, is potentially being held captive, is imprisoned by swords. What are swords? Thought, ego, identification, society. She is being imprisoned by her own thoughts. It is a card of overthinking, self-doubt, going against yourself, being trapped by your own mind. And that only worsens in the Nine of Swords, but it's even darker in the Nine of Swords. We don't see somebody trapped. We see somebody crying, maybe just waking up from a nightmare. And behind this person are 9 swords in darkness, but the swords extend beyond the card, which shows that this person doesn't even know the endings or the limits of her own suffering, of her own ego, of her own thoughts, which are causing her so much suffering. Now, what do these swords do extend into? The Ten of Swords. So remember, these swords are thoughts, ego. When thoughts and ego go unchecked and are driven further into the illusion of difference between me and you, us versus them, we get the Ten of Swords. What has been growing in this illusion of separation finally overflows into a manifestation of physical death. This is somebody who was literally backstabbed by 10 swords, killed by the thoughts and ego of separation. Okay, now it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, it is, but there's some hope. You know, we notice that there's the hand of benediction that he holds on the bottom, which is a symbol of, amongst many other things, is an esoteric symbol of spirit and matter coming together. Then we have the sunrise in the back. But this is a card of facing mortality. And that is because mortality, the very idea of mortality, is based on the premise that there is a life we are living separate from everything else in the universe. And that premise is the ego, is the Suit of Swords. And if we let go of that premise of separation, then there is no separate self to die. Now, the tarot is filled with all of these esoteric connections and mystical teachings, and if you know where to look, things can get really, really deep, really, really interesting. And it's helped me navigate so many systems of realization and growth of consciousness. And yeah, and if you want to dig into that stuff, go to Tarot Mysticism Academy, check out some of my other work and other videos on that. Don't forget to watch Class 5, where we will dig into the Suit of Pentacles. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next wormhole. Much love.